Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. Today's episode is brought to you by Compassion International. We're so thankful to have Compassion International as a sponsor, as a partner with us here at Sports Spectrum. We're going to be talking about gratitude in this interview, this podcast with Jay Harris from ESPN. And I know the kids that are sponsored through Compassion might be the most grateful people that I've come across, because it's an opportunity for you and I to release children from poverty. Kids waiting with an opportunity to have a chance at life, to have that hope, to have the basic essentials that every child should have: food, education, medical care, vocational training. You can make that difference in a child's life for $38 a month, tax deductible. Consider sponsoring a child today by going to compassion.com/sportsspectrum. Compassion.com/sportsspectrum. Pray about it and consider sponsoring a child today. Today on the podcast, we welcome Jay Harris to the show. Jay is a SportsCenter anchor at ESPN. He's been there since 2003, 16 years now. Prior to that, worked in Pittsburgh at WPGH-TV. Jay went to high school in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, went to college at Old Dominion, a proud ODU alum. And Jay lives 5 minutes from my house here in Bristol, Connecticut. And this was a neat opportunity for me to talk with someone on the podcast that's a friend, someone that I've known a long time, someone that I've done life with, someone whose kids are friends with my kids, and just a really cool opportunity to go beneath the surface a little bit with Jay. Certainly we share ESPN stories, and he shares some fun stories of life as a SportsCenter anchor. But then we go a little bit below the surface and find out about his faith. Him and I, again, having gone to the same church and known each other for a long time, have had conversations about faith. But this was an opportunity to find out where that faith was born and the choice, as Jay puts it, that he made to follow Christ about 30 years ago, almost, he talks about. And this was a really fun podcast. And interestingly enough, maybe you didn't realize this, but the voice who introduces this podcast every single time you listen to it is one Jay Harris. So it's neat to have the guy who introduces this podcast on the podcast being interviewed. Take a listen to this really fun conversation that I was able to have in person here in Bristol, Connecticut with Jay Harris, SportsCenter anchor with ESPN, here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. And we are pleased to be joined here in person. My favorite type of interviews. Maybe the easiest interview to do in person that we've done here on Sports Spectrum. We've done 300 plus. This guy lives 5 minutes from my house, and I've known him for a long time, worked with him for a long time.
You still have that jump shot you have?
You can brag about my jump shot.
I always liked your jump shot.
My jump shot?
I always liked your jump shot.
It was more of a set shot.
Well, it went in a lot.
It did, which really doesn't matter what it looks like as long as it goes in. And by the way, you have a pretty good jump shot too. But
well, that's true, Jason.
You and I, Jay Harris, welcome to the show. We were both talking about a week ago. We were at a party together, and I said, "Do you play ball anymore?" And you said, "Oh, no. And neither do I. You're a little bit older than me, but we're still around the same age, late 40s or so, early 50s. And it's like, I don't really want to have to deal with injuries anymore.
No, my knees let me know.
Yeah.
Plus, seeing other people go down with Achilles injuries, that's
people
the
that
one
we
that
worked with.
scares me.
Right.
I mean, I did my patella years ago, and it's fine. I'm great. I recover well. But the Achilles just scares me. I want no part of that.
And I love playing. I could attest when we played together that you loved playing too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, fun. It's the best exercise. You're out there running around. You have no idea. You're just having fun.
Yeah.
And then you're sweating and dropping buckets, and it's good.
And we always take it a little too seriously, right?
Yeah.
Jay, welcome to the podcast. Really glad you're here. 16 years it's been that you've been at ESPN. I went and looked. That's a long time.
Been that long already?
16. You're like
wow.
licensed to drive now, and you walk in those buildings, right?
Yes.
Do you remember that first day when you first came there?
I don't remember my very first day because in the beginning, there's a 30-day, or there was a 30-day like introductory period where you just observe.
Yeah, you're training.
Yeah, so there wasn't a whole lot going on. I remember one of my first shows on ESPN News.
Okay.
It was a 3-hour show on a Saturday night.
Ooh.
And I walked off the set at 9 o'clock, and I kind of like did a motion where I was like fanning my bottom because the seat was really hot.
Yeah.
And
you hadn't moved for 3 hours.
No, it was the toughest thing I ever did in television.
Wow. And it was one of the first things.
Yeah, at ESPN. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if I always tell people, if you could do ESPN News, you could do anything in this business because it would come at you hard and fast, nonstop, highlights. As soon as the video rolls, the shot sheet would come across your desk and you would just go. Sometimes you hadn't seen it. You'd be interviewing. I remember interviewing, I don't know who I was talking to, but Gary Williams, former Maryland coach, apparently was in the queue somewhere. So I'm talking to someone. I'm interviewing someone. My producer gets in my ear and says, "I've got Gary Williams on the phone for you in 2 minutes. Think of some questions." And first of all, I'm like, I'm talking to someone. Shut up. Yeah. Two, who the heck is Gary Williams? Oh, my God. I had a brain. Yes.
Brain fart.
Yes. And I'm thinking, well, let me finish this first. All of this while I'm talking and listening to this person. Yeah. So it kind of splits your brain into 6 different ways that you just have to go with it and function with it.
Oh, Gary Williams, 2 minutes. Think of questions.
Think of some questions. Go. Yes.
That's a really hard part of the job, and I know that was the old days of ESPN News. I think it's a little less crazy unless there's breaking news, of course. Right?
Yeah, unless there's breaking news. SportsCenter is a little more structured. When I first got to do SportsCenter, I'm like, really? This is SportsCenter?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, because that's the iconic show that everybody knows. It was the first show ever to be on ESPN. They're going to celebrate 40 years this year, September 7th, and you suddenly are on SportsCenter. I don't know how long it took for you to kind of get that first SportsCenter show. It probably wasn't that long.
It was about, I think it was Mother's Day weekend. I started February, started on the air in March,
so
April,
just a few
May.
months.
Yeah, just a couple of months.
Was that a different big deal for you than?
I thought it was a total mistake. I saw it on my schedule, and I walked up to the schedule and said, "Excuse me, y'all messed up here because it says I got to do this." And they're like, "No, it's for real. Congratulations, you earned it." Yeah. Okay.
That's cool.
Guess I'll do it.
Yeah, and that show has been going on for years and years. It's definitely a different brand now. I don't want to say a different brand, but it's consumed differently, I think, in a lot of ways. People are still watching television, but even you and I both have our phones sitting on the table that we're taping this interview on and consuming content there. How have you seen, just in the 16 years you've been here, because I think about 2003 or so when you got to ESPN and just where we are in 2019, heading into 2020, 40 years, so much has changed just in 16 years, right?
Everything's so much faster, so much more immediate, so much more in your face, and so much more accessible, especially with social media. Yeah. I mean, people can access me, and I can access others, and it has really shrunk the world to a large degree. And I tell kids when I talk to them who want to get into this field, I said, you have an opportunity literally at your fingertips to reach out to whoever you'd like to talk to and try to pick their brains. You can do that. Do it respectfully. Some folks will respond. Some folks won't. You'll be surprised at the folks who do respond if you just approach them correctly. So use it to your advantage. Use this technology to your advantage and go farther than I ever did.
Yeah. Do you find that with people picking your brain, though, that advice is interesting because I get a lot of people asking me, what's your advice? What's your advice? You get it, I'm sure, way more than I get it. And I think I always tell them, go in looking to serve them as opposed to just trying to take.
I like that.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
And I don't know, a 20-year-old intern might not know how to go in and serve. And all you're saying is, I'm not trying to get a job here. I just want to be a sponge. Right. Have you seen that? Is that the most effective way from the young people that you talk to?
The smart ones.
So there are people who are not so smart.
Yeah, they're hey man, I want to work. I try to get my brand together, and this thing. You don't have a job. Right. You don't have a brand. Stop with the brand. I'm very basic and foundational. So first of all, learn how to tie a tie. Right. Okay. Yeah. Learn how to write. Learn how to speak. Learn how to ask a good question. Those things don't go out of style, whether I'm watching it on television or on a phone or however the delivery system is, there are basic foundational things in journalism that you have to know and master. And you get that stuff down, then worry about your brand. Then worry about the rest of the stuff. Then you can handle everything. But if you can't do those things, you're no good to me. I mean, I can give you a microphone and make you stand there, but if you sound like an idiot, you're not going to get a second chance.
No, you're not. And it's funny because the young people in today's age, and you have two kids, so you've seen this. Your kids are teenage girl, and is Bryce now 20?
He's 20, man.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
I know.
And no longer teenage boy.
Like that little fellow on your basketball team from years ago.
Just made me cry a little bit, throw up in my mouth, whatever you want to say. But these kids growing up now start with their brands at like 6th, 7th, 8th grade in these YouTube videos and getting noticed. And so that trickles over into any job, really, right? As they're trying to figure out what to do for the rest of their life. It's not just sports.
Yeah, but if you do it, in my opinion, and everyone has their own right way.
Sure.
I did a speaking engagement in D.C. years ago, and I met an 8-year-old who had a sports blog. And he had gotten some good folks on his blog because he came up to me and he was dressed nicely. I mean, he looked like an old soul. He's old fashioned.
Yeah.
But he had the basics down already. And that's what you do. You learn the basics and you approach people and they're like, oh, this kid or whoever, they're serious about this.
Yeah.
They're not just coming at me with some mess. So I'm going to take my time with them. And it's just that. I'm not going to say it's that simple because it's all the luck of the draw in many cases. It's timing. It's a lot of stuff. But if you at least have those basics, you give yourself a chance.
Yeah, and now today there's no excuse for getting down those basics and being seen by whoever you want. You said you can reach out to anybody today. Social media has changed the game, right?
Yeah, and you can start your own thing.
Yeah,
you don't have to wait. I mean, you go to a local whatever game, local beer league softball game, and do interviews and create a story, and just practice.
Yeah,
just practice. Allen Iverson was on to something.
He really was. He really was. Were you here at that time? Were you
I was.
at ESPN at that time?
Talking about practice.
How many times has that clip been played on ESPN airwaves?
A gazillion.
Hundreds of thousands. Jay Harris is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. What's your most memorable interview that you've done? I love the job that I get to do now. I've been a producer. See how I did this? I gave you the question. Now I'm going to talk for a minute while you think of your answer. So you don't even have to pay attention to what I'm saying right now. No, I produced for years and years, and now suddenly I've been asked to be behind the microphone and hosting and asking questions. I love it. I love getting to know people and to hear their stories. So asking for someone who's done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews, probably in the thousands, I would imagine, in your life. Does one stand out? The Gary Williams one was a lot of fun because you literally have 2 minutes to think about what you're going to ask him. But is there a guy, a name, a person when you were interviewing them and you were just like, okay, this is maybe it's my hero, or maybe it's the moment when a big news story is happening? Is there a memorable one that sticks out to you?
I never really had a hero moment. Not in that space. Okay. In other spaces I have.
Yeah.
That's a tough question. I always go back to the interview that I did with LeBron James after he won. I think it was his second MVP, and I was on the 6 o'clock SportsCenter.
Okay.
And we did a lot of pre-taping back then, so we pre-taped this interview.
Yes.
And it went about 8 minutes. It was before he made his decision.
So he was still with Cleveland.
He was still with Cleveland, and he was going to be a free agent. And I, asked him the questions and tried to set him up and nicely and said, so where are you going? And he wouldn't tell me.
Of course.
But then it morphed into this conversation that was informative and entertaining. And I even asked him about the SportsCenter commercial he had done with Scott Van Pelt, and asked him, had he ever gotten his chair back from Scott? He's like, yeah, tell Scott I want my chair, because that was my chair that he was sitting in. And we went about 8 minutes. And it was so good, we ran the whole thing.
Normally that's rare.
Yeah, we cut those things down like to 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
We ran like the first 4 minutes, came back from commercial, and ran the next 4. Because it was just a good conversation. Mm-hmm. And not that I'm the best interviewer in the world. I think we just struck gold that day.
Yeah.
But again, I tell kids, if you're able to do that one-on-one thing and just talk to people, whether it be someone you're interviewing or just talking into the camera and find that one person on the couch, you're probably going to get something good. And that's one that sticks out. There's another one with Dwayne Wade.
Okay.
Where I asked him to be, back when he was doing I forget the phone company commercial, to be in his 5. Okay. And we wouldn't put me in his 5.
He wouldn't.
And I was like, why not? He's like, you got to get me more on SportsCenter. I said, we're on SportsCenter now.
Didn't he do This is SportsCenter commercial?
Yes,
too?
he did.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. But that was funny. Those guys and gals, I mean, they are so extraordinary, the things that they can do and have done, their accomplishments. And when you allow them the opportunity to just be themselves, it's just good. Yeah. It's just good.
It's funny. We could do a whole hour just on ESPN stories and cool opportunities. You mentioned the hero moment away from an interview. Do you want to share that story?
Probably the first time I met Julius Erving.
Dr. J.
Yeah. That was my guy.
That was your guy?
That was my guy growing up.
Greatest afro in the history of the NBA?
Yeah. That and just, the big hands and the palming the ball and dunking the ball. Yeah, that was. And we have the same birthday, February 22nd.
That's right.
Yeah. And through some friends, I ended up hosting, and I still do, his golf event. Yeah. So getting to meet him and take that first picture, and then look at my phone, and his number's in my phone, and we play golf together. This is really cool.
and you don't lose that, right?
No, you don't lose that.
Never.
That sticks with you.
Yeah. Has he ever called you when you look at your phone and this happened to me with Darryl Strawberry. So
okay.
Side note, Darryl Strawberry, my sports hero. And I met him, spent the day with him at ESPN 2009, I think it was. And he took my number. And like 3 months later, he just called me. And he was asking me about my dad because that's how we connected. And the phone rang, and I just looked at it. And this was the early stages of iPhones. Right. And it rang, and there's his name. And I just looked at it. And Dawn's like, aren't you going to answer that? My wife. I'm like, no, Darryl Strawberry's calling, and I'm just looking at the fact that he's calling me. She's like, well, you better answer that. And so I just wonder, like, Dr. J, anybody else that you've met where it's just, I mean, you've met so many people. Yeah. Right? I mean, and that's the beauty and the blessing of working in a job like you're in.
Yes, it is. And you really understand quickly that they're just people.
They really are.
They just happen to do whatever they do really, really well.
Yeah.
They have families. They have kids. They have teenage issues. They have job things. They have contracts. They are just people. Yeah. And the quicker you learn that, the better, because that's how you should treat them. Yeah. And I think they respect that.
And they become very aware when they're not. And you and I have had that conversation just a couple times. We went on a trip to Disney together. Gosh, how long has that been now? 7 years or something like that.
Goodness, yeah.
And I remember walking through, and a couple people kind of noticed you and say, "Hey, Mr. ESPN," or whatever they'll say. And I said, I can't believe I'm walking here with a celebrity, something like that. And you looked at me and you said, "Stop." And it was, you were being funny, obviously, because we're friends. But I knew that there was something serious to it, too, because you'd never wanted, in all the times I've known you, ever to be treated differently. And you're a TV guy interviewing the people like Dr. J that you love. But can you walk through that a little bit, just sort of that notoriety of being recognized and kind of dealing with that?
It's cool.
Sure.
It's fun. I've accepted it as part of the gig, and I get it. But it's not necessarily me. I'm just a conduit. When I walk on campus and see those 4 letters, that's it. The ESPN, that's what attracts people. And I get that. Yeah. And that's not my chair on the set. That's ESPN's chair that I get to sit in. Yeah. And that's cool. I'm privileged that way. So when I meet people and they're excited to see me because I say things from a place that they like to watch, I'm supposed to sign an autograph. I'm supposed to shake a hand. I'm supposed to take a picture. Yeah. And I don't mind that. I mean, there's a story that Buck O'Neill told in his autobiography about he was 94 years old and people still coming up to him. Someone said, don't you get tired of that? He's like, no. Yeah. It's when they stop. That's when I'll be like, oh, God, they've stopped.
Time to check yourself.
What happened? Yes, time to check yourself. Yeah. So I appreciate it. I really do. Yeah. Don't mind it. Yeah. Now, when I have like friends or closer associates that I've known that still kind of do me like that, that's when I'm like, yo, you need to really, let's talk. Yeah. Because if you don't stop that, we're not going to be friends anymore. Right. Because I'm just me. I cut my grass. I take my car to get it serviced. Yes, you do. It's the same thing. Yeah. I'm me. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm me.
Yeah, you're a dad and you're a husband, and our kids are friends, and I see that side of you, and it reminds me that, because people will ask, whether it's you or other people that I've had connected with, and they'll say, what are they like? I'm like, they're just like you. Yeah. They're just like me. Like, they just have a job where that people get to watch them every day on TV. But other than that, they're this.
I just wear makeup and a suit.
Now, makeup is a whole nother story. We'll have that conversation maybe another time. Jay Harris is here on Sports Spectrum's podcast, and we haven't even talked about faith yet. And I'd really love to know where that birthed for you, the foundation of where that came from. I know that you grew up in Chapel Hill.
Yes.
Right? And then you went to college at Old Dominion.
Yes.
And a very proud alum at ODU. So tell us about where that faith was birthed, where that faith foundation sort of came in place for you.
Honestly, I was probably like any other child. It was forced on me by my parents and my grandparents. Yeah. You are going to church today, and you're going to church every Sunday, and we're going to Bible study on Wednesday, and you're going to be in vacation Bible school, and you will learn the Beatitudes, or I will whoop your butt.
Okay, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So honest, that's probably where it started, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it got to be a choice. I think it was 1990 in Virginia Beach. It was Word of Life Christian Center.
I see a smile on your face.
I went there because my then girlfriend, now wife, her parents with the church. So
the lovely Miss Stephanie.
Yeah, the lovely.
We got to give her a shout out. We haven't done that yet.
Hello, the lovely Miss Stephanie. And I liked the congregation because it was at Virginia Beach, and it was diverse, and I enjoyed the message. And I was sitting in service one day, and the pastor was talking about, there are people out here, the Lord is talking to me, they want to come to give their life to Christ, blah, 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 blah. And I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, I've done that already. I don't know if I really had, when you're a kid, you think.
Yeah, you just assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting there. And this older gentleman, so disrespectful, gets up.
This old dude, right?
Yeah, this older fella gets up out of where the musicians are, walks down the aisle, and comes in my row and stops at me and says, "He's talking about you, brother. Come up with me. Let's go." And I'm thinking, okay. He was a bass player, and I play bass.
Yes, you do.
So that's the only reason I went with him, to be honest with you.
You were having this strong stirring in your soul.
I thought,
respond.
There must be, the Lord knows my language. So he sent the bass player to get me. So that's my story.
It's interesting. And you say it's a choice, and it really is, because you have kids now.
Yeah.
And Bryce and Tyra are awesome kids, and I've seen that they're both in the place, especially Tyra being a little younger, but in a place where they've had to make that choice for themselves now, especially Bryce as he's 20 years old, shaking my head again. But there's a choice factor there that we all have to come to, and not just rely on the faith of those who taught you. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, you raised your kids to go to church. I raised my daughter to go to church. But at some point, they have to come and do that faith themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you hope, and honestly, whatever choices they make, you hope it's right for them and they do well with it.
Of course.
Because and I talk to my friends all the time, the whole faith thing, the religion thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's all kind of a crapshoot depending on where you're born. Because if we're born somewhere overseas, we have a different introduction.
Completely.
We're worshiping somebody. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah. We might be persecuted for
exactly.
what you believe.
So whatever you want to be or whatever you choose, just do it as faithfully as you can do. That's my motto.
So as that moment happens for you and you make that choice with the bass player, I love that story. What changes? What happens now for you as you start to go into your journey as a broadcaster? I think is happening at that point. You're soon to be getting married at that point as well. Where is faith kind of playing through that role of your journey in your, mid to late 20s going into 30 years old or so?
You are trying to adhere to everything that you're reading, listening to, everything that you're consuming. You're making an effort, and you're really trying to decipher the messages that you're getting from other places. I went through a space where I went like, I'm all in. Totally all in. You know how in the very beginning you're on fire.
Oh yeah.
And then I kind of backed up a bit because my first job was at an AM radio station. I was doing the news, and they played a lot of rap music. It was WRAP, it was rap. And
conveniently.
Yes. And I got this from people. Oh, you don't listen to that music, do you? Really? That's where you work? And I'm thinking, wait. I'm trying to take steps in the field that I've chosen and also take steps in the faith that I've chosen. Why are you dogging me from where I work? What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
What does that music have to do with anything? Why don't you just, I wasn't strong enough to say this, why don't you just nurture me in my faith? Why don't you just talk to me about that?
Yeah.
And we leave that out of it.
Yeah.
So I think as good Christian folk, we have to be careful with the things that we focus on with people. And we get so, especially with social media, oh God, the posts I see.
I see him too.
Yeah.
It shakes my head from all sides and all angles.
Yeah. We really have to do a little, I don't know if it's prayer or just Googling to get knowledge and focus and perspective on things before we say things or post things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that has been with me through my whole journey.
Yeah.
Just the whole kind of, okay, I'm gonna try to be like this, but I need to try and I don't do a great job of this all the time, focus more on Christ than the people of Christ.
Yeah.
Because the people of Christ, you want to smack them in the head sometimes.
That is very, very true. I'm not even going to argue with you. And that's hard, isn't it? Because we live in a world that is fallen, that is broken, that is full of flawed people.
Yeah. Me being one of them.
Yes. By the way, me too. Yeah. Just making sure we're clear on this for whoever's listening.
Absolutely.
So as we're flawed people, what have you learned as you... Because there's a legalistic side to a lot of Christianity, I think, that we see from a lot of people, black, white, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's where I jumped early too.
Yeah. Like into that legalist, like you have to be this way, you have to do this, you have to listen to this.
Yes.
So today, I think that's even more magnified because of social media, and you kind of see some sides to people that maybe you didn't know, or at least you can at least challenge, even friends. You and I do this a lot to each other and to people that we're both in the same circles with, is challenging a little bit to say, okay, I see what you're saying here, but what about this? That's changed a lot. Has that evolved a lot for you, especially with the access that's changed?
It has, because social media, like you said, gives you a window into some folks' souls who are willing to put it out there. So I've had, not on folks' walls or out where people can see them, I'll DM folks and say, listen, let's have lunch.
Yes.
Let's have a chat. Because there's some things that you said that concern me, and I want to understand where you're coming from. Because I do think we need to be able to have that conversation with folks as Christians. We can't just diss people. We can't just write them off. We can't just turn left as they turn right or turn right as they turn left. We have to be able to have a conversation, and it has to be a give and take. I may not agree, but I really want to understand. Consequently, I want you to understand why I think you may be kind of off. And then whatever happens, happens.
But that's missing, isn't it? I mean, you even said something that stood out to me about DMing someone privately.
Right.
Because it feels like, because it's so public and available for everybody, that they want to put it out there.
Yes.
So everybody can hear either their opinion, or so that somebody can come back so they can, it's almost like picking a fight.
Yes.
You know, going back to the old school days when we were on the playground, it's like a kid would make fun of another kid so that they'd pick a fight, and now you have a bully and you have this thing going. This is magnified a lot in the social media world, and talking to a lot of athletes on this podcast, a lot of football players especially, it's within the church circles that concerns me the most, that people are picking fights and putting hard lines on certain issues, whether it's race or same sex or whatever it is. Like, people are hardlining on certain things, and there are certain things that I'm going to always stand by that I believe the Bible speaks about.
Right.
Because it's Jesus Christ speaking in the Bible being true.
Right.
However, sitting down, having a conversation in person, understanding, listening, and being empathetic, it's gone.
Yeah.
I hate that that's gone.
Everyone has retreated to their own corners.
So what can we do about that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Have more conversations, encourage more conversations. Yeah. It's honestly, it's probably getting back down to basics. Now, none of this, I always say it's not new. It's just now.
Yeah.
None of this is new. None of the hardline stuff is new. We just have access to it because social media and people put it out. But the conversations have always been held in their private homes at dinner time or whatever, when they wake up in the morning or in the car ride to school or what have you. But I think our responsibility is to try and not consume things that make us feel good and validate our own sense of self-worth or our own identity, and venture out and listen to other things, and talk to other people. And if you're in a room and you look around the room and you're the only white person, you're the only black person, you're the only conservative, you're the only liberal, you're the only whatever label you decide you want to label yourself with that day,
right,
maybe you should find a different room. Or make sure you try and put yourself in a room where it's totally opposite.
Yeah.
So you input different things. And
but that's not our normal
tendency.
Not.
It is
our
not.
Our natural tendency is to gravitate to the people who think like us, who act like us,
You're
who
right.
believe like us.
And honestly, I think part of since my life is so public, I prefer the private, the DM, and let's talk in public. Let's go to lunch. I don't want a public fight.
Right.
One, because I like to keep my job.
That's important.
And I'll probably say something that will make somebody mad. Mm-hmm. And I really don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I probably already have, because some things just need to be said.
Sure.
But yeah, you have to fight the inclination to stay in your own bubble. You got to pop that bubble. And I hate labels.
Yeah.
I can't stand labels. I get in an argument with my son, who's Bryce. He's a music head.
Yes.
And he tells me this song or this genre of music. I was like, why is it that way? Why is it rock and roll? Why is it R&B? Why can't it just be music?
Yeah.
Because some radio programmer decided we're going to segment the market and target these people. We're going to make money here and make money there and make money. Why do we conform to that? Why can't good music be good music? Why?
Yeah.
And he's right, but then he says what I said, because the money and the marketing and blah, blah, blah. And we're just sheep, and we're just following these various sheep herders.
Puppets in some ways. Right?
Puppets, yes, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay Harris has been our guest here on Sports Spectrum. I want to ask you about platform, because God's blessed you with an incredible platform. So from a faith perspective, what is your responsibility, in your opinion, about not being silent about your faith?
Right.
You're doing a podcast that people are going to listen to, so you're not silent about your faith,
right,
but not necessarily being so consuming, broadcasting it 100 miles an hour everywhere you go, social media, wherever, of living out your faith in Christ. What do you think is the responsibility there with the platform that you've been given to be open about your faith?
I don't know. I think it's different with everyone. I think some folks are more comfortable broadcasting it. Personally, I like one-on-one.
Yeah.
I think it means more, because again, I am imperfect, and I don't want to be that guy that comes across as this preacher of virtue and values, and then one day I mess up, and they go, "Ha ha! See, I told you, blah blah blah." Because everyone messes up. No one's perfect. There's no one perfect except one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like to talk one-on-one. I don't know what the responsibility is.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to do a good job. I try to represent when I'm on television.
Mm-hmm.
Try to make sure my tie is straight, my hair is combed, and I don't mess up my words.
Sure.
Try to be an example for many different areas. It started, I want to do right because my boys watch it.
Right.
Yeah. And other little boys who look like him are watching, who maybe, oh, wow, I've never seen that on television before.
Sure.
He looks like me.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was for me growing up.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different areas where I feel that I need to represent. And I don't necessarily put one over the other. I try and serve all as best I can.
No, that's a good way. I think it's funny. It's go out into the world, preach the gospel, right? The Great Commission that Jesus tells all of us. But he isn't saying go out into the world and put a big cross on your chest and post about the Bible every single day on Twitter, which I do. That's just the way that I go about it. But I also have these one-on-one conversations because I feel they're so important. But when Jesus is talking about the Great Commission, he means what you're describing in a lot of ways, to have that one-on-one conversation, right?
Yeah. Just just meet people where they are.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
It's exactly what he did.
Went a lot of places where people today who are quote unquote Christian won't go. Yeah. Like, but Jesus did.
Yeah.
What would Jesus do? We seem to forget that. That was great. Yeah. What would Jesus do?
WWJD.
Yeah. I mean, we put that to a lot of what people say and do now. Yeah. It would stop them in their tracks because Jesus wouldn't boast that. Yeah. Jesus wouldn't say that. Jesus wouldn't go down that road. He just wouldn't.
But that's the weird world that we're in today. Is we'll believe in Jesus or claim to follow him, and then I think it's a great quote from, I want to say it, Gandhi or somebody like that, says, "I like your Jesus." Mm-hmm. You said this kind of earlier. I like your Jesus, but your followers, the followers or your Christians are the ones that I got some concerns about, and that's a thing that I think all of us as Christians, Bible-believing Christians, good Christians, folk, as you said, need to think about. Yeah, like, who are we following, and know that we're flawed, and trying to be Christ-like in how we live our life. Yeah, yeah.
I think we should just do more with our ears. Than our mouths.
Well, I'll throw some scripture at you now. James 1:19 says, "Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry."
Well, there you go.
What would happen if that life was being lived by a lot of people in this country?
That's a good one. You should put that on a T-shirt.
James 1:19. I think I will. Jay Harris is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Last couple questions here. Community is so important in the life of a believer, I think, and I know it's important in your life. I know your community, your influence. There's almost spheres of communities that you are a part of, because you have your work community where you know and are in contact with tons of people daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. There's your church family. There's your family. There's your friends who aren't associated with this church or associated with ESPN. There's a community, though, that's so vital in all of our lives. When I say the word community to the life of Jay Harris, what do you think? What comes to mind?
That's a great question. I think, wow, I don't know. Like you said, there are so many different communities that there's so many different circles that my feet or hands are in. I don't know. I guess maybe since I'm there most of the time, well, two, family and work. Yeah, those are the two that jump off the page. And everything else maybe falls in line under that. I know the hierarchy is supposed to be faith, family, and work.
I get it. Our pastor, who's our mutual pastor, might be listening to this and say, "Why didn't you put the church family up there, Jay Harris?" But you do spend the most time at work, really, even more than your family in a lot of cases, right? Yeah, yeah. So that you have to be able to have community with those people.
You do, and that makes a lot of the other things possible. Yeah, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here.
Right. So now, Jay, you are 16 years at ESPN. We can announce actually here, and I'm sure it'll get out before that, hopefully, that you just signed a new 4-year deal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So it's going to take you to 20 years now at ESPN, which is kind of crazy.
God willing. As long as I don't say something stupid.
Also true. Quick to listen, slow to speak. But so we go 20 years potentially at ESPN. Now you're in that circle of guys and gals who've been there a long time. And when a new person who comes to ESPN to be on SportsCenter sees you, they're like, I watched that guy when I was whatever. And so you have these young people coming up. Tell me about navigating through that as a guy who, it's almost like I was talking to a quarterback once, and he said, when a young quarterback comes up, I want to compete with them because I like my job and I want to play. Right. But I also want to be as willing a participant, a servant as I can to impart that wisdom onto that younger guy or gal. You seen that?
Yeah. I've never been the person that was threatened by the next young person that was coming up.
That's good.
I have mentees who have surpassed me monetarily and who are very high profile, and I'm quite happy. Sure. Because go do your thing. Right. Because I remember when you were there, and now you're here, and that's where you're supposed to be. Right. I don't mind, because, I'm all right. I'm good. I going back to my earlier Gary Williams story. Yeah. When I was on the set trying to think of questions to ask Gary Williams, my former co-anchor John Seibel said, Maryland was getting ready to play Marquette in the tournament. Ask them how they're going to D-up Dwayne Wade.
There you go.
Yes. Now, John didn't have to do that. I was this new kid.
Right, he could have just said nothing, watched you fail, and then him take the glory.
Exactly. Yeah. But he shot me a question, and he was a good example for me. I think it was in me already, but he showed me, yeah, man, don't be that guy. Be John Teibel. Be that guy who was willing to take somebody and whatever. So I've always tried to, the new folks, welcome them in, have them over to the house. Normally they don't have family. Come over for Thanksgiving. Just little things like that. Because that's what you're supposed to do.
It's Christ-like.
Exactly. It is. It is.
Really is.
It's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So I love when the young folks come up. And I'm Uncle Jay now. I don't mind. That's fine. I gotta.
When it becomes Grandpa Jay, then we're gonna have some conversations, right?
That's true. You're right. You're right. But I get emails and people wonder, can you watch my stuff? Can you look at this? I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. This has been great. I really appreciate you being here on the show. I'm going to ask you the question that we ask all of our guests here when we close the podcast.
All right.
What are you learning from God today? What is the Lord teaching you right now for your deal, New Year's, four more years, we'll say, at ESPN, and lots of great things happening, kids getting older. We didn't even get a chance to talk about being parents to a teenage daughter, but we can do that another time. We'll do that one-on-one at a restaurant.
Okay, we can do that.
But what are you learning from the Lord right now where he has you?
Gratitude. Your parents are like, always be thankful. Sometimes you forget that. But I am thankful because but for the grace of God go I,
Yeah.
It didn't have to be 16 years here. It didn't have to be 4 more. It didn't have to be anything. Gratitude and being thankful. And I really see it when I go other places and see people in other situations. And thinking, okay, I've been blessed to be here. I need to be thankful for that, but also I need to try and do whatever I can to help these folks over here.
Yeah.
Because again, that's what I'm supposed to do. So it's a mix of that.
Gratitude, I think it's that and empathy to me are the two life game changers.
Right.
I really believe that. If you're thankful for where you are, wherever you are, there's ways to be thankful no matter what situation you're in.
Absolutely.
And then if you have empathy towards the other person that you're thinking about, that maybe you disagree with, whatever, I think it's going to allow you to enter into a place where you can hear them, listen to them, respect whether you agree or disagree on whatever the topic is, even in sports. If we would just have a little bit more empathy, I think those are game changers. Jay, thanks, man, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Romano.
Absolutely.
Always
this was
a pleasure.
Great. Let's do it again.
Coach Romano.
Coach Romano. Side note before we really say goodbye. How old was Bryce when I coached him in upward basketball? Maybe 11?
Maybe 11.
10 or 11? You helped with that.
Yeah.
And I think Jackie, what was Jackie's last name? What is Jackie's
Roselle.
last name? Jackie
she
Tabor
was Roselle.
now.
She's Tabor now.
She
Tabor
was
Small.
assistant
Jackie Tabor Small.
Tabor
Jackie Small.
That's right, Jackie Small. So you, me, and Jackie were coaching Bryce when he was 11 years old, and here we are 9 years later.
Yeah.
He's in college, and we're just getting older.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we are. We were running the joint there. Our team
used to be.
Our team was awesome.
Yeah, it was a Christian league, and we were sometimes not playing Christian league, but that's all right. We wanted to win. So, Jay, thanks again.
You're welcome, Jason.
Many thanks to Jay Harris for being here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Love Jay, and just grateful that he was available and willing to take the time to spend a few minutes here on Sports Spectrum. Give him a follow over on Twitter at JHarrisESPN. He's a fun follow there and a great dude. He really is. I've known him a long time, and hopefully we'll get him back on the podcast again, because we had a whole nother podcast that we taped without hitting the record button, both before and after we actually taped this podcast, talking about parenting teen daughters and some other things that we were sharing. So we'll get him back on hopefully in the next year or so and continue the conversation. Many thanks to Jay Harris for being here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. We also want to thank our sponsors, Compassion International, for sponsoring this podcast. $38 a month. That's all it costs. Tax deductible, an opportunity for you to release a child from poverty. Food, education, medical care, vocational training, your basic essentials. That's what these children that are waiting to be sponsored are looking for, the basic essentials. Really what these do is they provide these children with hope, a chance to get out of what they're stuck in. And $38 a month, tax deductible, allows that to happen with these children. And you and I can make that difference by sponsoring them through Compassion. Go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum, compassion.com/sportsspectrum. Pray about it and consider sponsoring a child today. Give us a follow over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Send us a message, a DM, a reply. Let us know that you heard this podcast. Send us any guest ideas or any feedback you might have. You can always email me directly, jason@sportsspectrum.com. I'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts on Jay Harris or any other interview that we've done or any ideas for future interviews that you'd like to see here on the podcast. You can also give us a watch. You can also check out our website, sportsspectrum.com. That's really the place to go every day. Bookmark that site. Check it out. Daily articles on sports and faith. A sports devotional every single day at 6 a.m. Eastern, right on the website. And, of course, all of our podcasts can be found there as well. sportsspectrum.com. We'll see you next time with a brand new episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day.